Holy crap, we got a big fish entering the transfer portal. This one is massive. I have seen some names enter the portal and been genuinely shocked that they're looking for a new home. There is no one who has compared to my reaction with this. Alabama running back Justice Haynes, the once presumed bell cow back for the Crimson Tide, is entering the portal. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. He was once presumed as the crown jewel of Nick Saban's recruiting class. He still has all the intangibles that you look for in a focal point of your ground game. And I believe he is going to be the most sought after tailback in the country. Everybody should be going after a Justice Haynes. And I believe everybody in the SEC will. But who is going to land this big fish from Buford, Georgia? Let's go break it on down. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, hit that ring notification, and subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure you follow us on the socials. The link is in the description down below. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson on all of my social media, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com and use the promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. The holiday season is right around the corner, and what better gift to give someone in your life than a RHOBACK pullover, fleece, hoodie, jogger, shorts, much more. RHOBACK.com, use the promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Justice Haynes is in the transfer portal. I don't think many of you remember when they got him out of high school. Nick Saban was giddy as all hell. Like, the twinkle in his eyes was very similar to what we saw with Mark Ingram, with Trent Richardson, with Najee Harris, with Damian Harris, with Derrick Henry, with even when they brought in Jahmyr Gibbs for the 1 year, when they had Josh Jacobs. He was viewed to be a difference maker, like the focal point of all focal points at RBU. That was the level of expectations that they had when they signed him. And then Saban retired, and they bring in Kalen DeBoer, and things go south. It wasn't a bad season. Now, when compared to his first year season, had 168 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns, 5.7 yards per play, 448 yards on 79 carries. It was the number of reps in the signature games that were really unsettling. He averaged about 6.8 carries per contest in the SEC, and he averaged about 7.8 carries against Power 4 opponents. In the game against Tennessee, 8 carries for 22 yards, 2.8 yards per play. In the game against Oklahoma, 3 carries for 18 yards. In the game against Georgia, 6 carries for 35 yards. And in the game against Vanderbilt, 6 carries for 23 yards. So regardless of what you think it was, whether it's the fact that they decided to be so codependent on Jam Miller and Jalen Milroe, a very quarterback-eccentric rushing attack, whether it was the offensive line being a turnstile at multiple instances, whether it was the inconsistency of the play calling, Justice Haynes did not live up to expectations in Tuscaloosa this year. That does not mean for 1 second that he can't be a complete focal point for any ground game. In fact, I would bet that he will be. This is a guy that when you remember what he was able to do in high school, he was a stud. He was one of the best running backs, number 2 running back in the country, number 2 player in the state of Georgia, top 35 overall player. And I believe that he is going to stick around in the SEC. So who's going to land him? Let's start off with the obvious one. It's Georgia. Now, why is it Georgia? He's a legacy. His father, Vernon, was a part of the Mark Richt squad back in the day in 2001, if I'm not mistaken. He was able to become a focal point in the lead running back. I believe that they're going to at least make an offer. It would be shocking if they didn't. Vernon Hayes became a major runner, had over 100+ rushing yards in multiple games against Ole Miss, against Georgia Tech, against Boston College. He eventually ended up becoming, a running back in the 2002 NFL draft, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just say he had a big performance. Now, they got Nate Frazier. They also could bring back Trevor Etienne. Etienne's only a junior. If he feels like that there's more left in the tank, then they're going to bring him back for another year. But what if one enters the transfer portal or enters the NFL draft? Well, now that creates an opportunity for Justice Haynes to become RB1. And Kirby Smart is going to care about the legacy. Kirby Smart's also going to care about hurting Alabama. Because what's the narrative right now surrounding Kirby? He can win the big game. He can win a national championship. He can beat Texas on the road or in Atlanta. It doesn't really matter. He can't beat Alabama. It was no longer a Nick Saban thing. Kalen DeBoer was up by 4 scores and 7 minutes before they finally found action on the offense. So if you hurt Alabama, why not hurt them with one of its former players? Why not hurt them with somebody that when you look back and say, we knew how to better utilize him. We knew what was a better move for us on how to get him more involved in the game. We knew that he was going to be a difference maker that you didn't. It's at least worth a conversation. Another team that's worth a conversation, I'm going to go with Tennessee. And it feels so weird to say because of you feel like that you can't allow players to go to rival schools. But how do you not consider it if you're Justice Haynes? Dylan Sampson was snubbed a Doak Walker Award, or at least a Doak Walker finalist nomination, but he's the reason why the Volunteers are going to the college football playoff. Over 1,700 rushing yards, over 19 touchdowns, 6.7 yards of play. And I know that you have some good young up-and-coming talent at the position. You got Deshaun Bishop. You got Cameron Seldon. But I want a difference maker for Nico Iamaleava. I want to know if the passing attack is not going to be potent, if I'm not going to be able to capitalize, whether it's with Dante Thornton, whether that's with Mike Matthews, whether that's with a transfer portal wide receiver coming on in, whoever it is, I can always go back to the well of the ground game. And people want to look at this offense underneath Josh Heupel and say, it's always passing, it's always passing, it's always passing. Look at the numbers. They're a very balanced run first, pass second offensive personnel. They love to establish the run to set up the pass. And they want a bruiser. What's been the main emphasis when it comes to a guy like Justice Haynes? He wants carries. Very limited this past year. Very limited as a freshman. He is waiting for his breakout performance. They will use him and run him into the ground in Knoxville. And I promise you this, Rocky Top is going to be rolling for the next few years as a legit force in the SEC. So if they can get a good running back, they got to go make that move. And the same thing goes for it's weird to say because this is not normal in college football and it's kind of disgusting. Same thing goes for Auburn. Auburn has got to be a player in the portal this year. And it's not just at quarterback. They're going to set the market for quarterback. They got to be going after defensive linemen. They got to be going after interior offensive linemen. They got to be going after a running back. They got to go after a dude. You didn't utilize Jarquez Hunter. Very similarly to how Brian Harsin kind of snubbed Tank Bigsby. That is exactly what Hugh Freeze did this past year, in my opinion, with Jarquez Hunter. You get to hit the do-over button. You get to bring in a guy that already knows, hey, this rivalry means something. We're in for a big-time year. We are Auburn. We believe that we should be competitive. We should be right alongside Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee. And now you throw in Texas. And then you also get the resurgence of potentially Florida. And you're also got to throw in South Carolina potentially making some moves. And Texas A&M is doing some things. We got to be competitive. We're not going to sit by idly and play second fiddle while LSU makes a move and South Carolina does something and Vanderbilt does something. We want to be that team. You go get Justice Haynes, you are that team. Or at least it's the start of that team. With the personnel you have at wide receiver, you're going to bring in a transfer portal tight end. You're going to set the market at quarterback. You have a solid defense. A defense that was very slept on this year, I want to throw out there. You got to make something. Justice Haynes. New system, a system that is going to predicate the run, allow him to be able to work his way into the open field. I think a much more, I would say, complete offensive line. For the time being, it's worth a conversation. I at least think that if you can make a pitch, it's worth having. Because here's the deal. You heard Georgia and you heard Alabama. That's kind of a win-win in your favor if you're the Tigers going into a must-win year in 2025. 3 more teams for you. Let's start off with the least likely, Texas. Running backs work at Texas. They do. Jonathan Brooks was on his way to over 1,200 rushing yards before he tore his ACL. Look at the offense and how it utilized Bijan Robinson. He won the Doak Walker Award in 2022. He's a good player. When you don't have C.J. Baxter, you're still finding ways to work with Jared Gibson and Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue. And this could be a best of the bunch type of mentality. This is a dude that if you put him on in next to Arch Manning, congratulations. Now you got a 1-2 combination in the backfield that absolutely is going to horrify teams. Because if you got to trust at Arch's athleticism, but you also can't commit too much to Justice Haynes because if you can tuck and run, and there goes 16 off to the races. He can also be effective in pass protection. He can also be effective as a pass catcher. And I believe Texas, now knowing that they have the taste, now knowing that they're along the way when it comes to being a part of this SEC. We know that we're good enough to hold our own against LSU, against Alabama, against Georgia. We're belonging in that conversation. We're at the big boy table. You got to continue to act like you're at the big boy table. You can't go ahead and sit down on the sidelines. You got to add more. And I think a guy that is going to fit an offense that will predicate his utilization in the run, however that may see fit, you're helping out your squad. You're remaining a complete package in the SEC. You're remaining a force in the college football playoff hunt for a national championship. And you're taking some pressure off of your young quarterback. Call that a win-win-win. Missouri's another one. They have a good young running back in Jamal Roberts. I'm very excited to see what he can do. But you had a 1-2 combination that I thought was perfectly thunder and lightning. Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll. Now, unfortunately, you didn't have them for the entirety of the season, but when they were out there, they were working harmoniously together. I think that that's going to benefit whoever is the quarterback, because there's going to be a name out there in Miller Moss that I think could eventually find his way to Mizzou. And if you do, there's going to be a couple players that I think could join him coming on over from Southern California. But let's say you don't, and let's say you got to go with Sam Horn, or let's say you got to go with Matt Zollers. Don't you want to be able to take some pressure off of the quarterback as they're getting adjusted? Don't you want to be able to have that premier running back? And isn't it funny? Again, we talk about a guy like Eli Drinkwitz. He is somebody that beats to his own drum. And it kind of feels like if you watch the movie Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, he belongs in the island of misfit toys, those that were cast to the wayside. What was Justice Haynes this past year? Cast to the wayside. Jalen Milroe, Jam Miller, which, by the way, Alabama fans, you're in good hands. You're going to be fine at running back. What you brought in with Deere coming in for the 2025 class, what you have with Richard Young, it feels like Jam Miller's coming back. I just want to throw that out there. For Justice Haynes, if you go to Mizzou, you get to play Alabama, so a revenge game for you that's going to be in front of your now new hometown crowd. And on top of that, you would be the focal point. In fact, you would probably see as many carries as Cody Schrader did in 2023. Like, that's how much you can bank on you being a part of it. But the team that I would love to see him with, oh, wait, my bad. I got one more for you. Ole Miss. How do I not miss Ole Miss? Ole Miss loves to run the football. Ole Miss needs an actual premier running back. I don't know what's going to happen with Logan Diggs. I don't know what's going to happen with several other players if they're going to enter the portal, because they barely were used this past year and they got another season of eligibility. But you got a young quarterback in Austin Simmons, or maybe you get a veteran that comes on in and competes with Austin Simmons. But regardless, you want to emphasize the rushing attack. When Quinshon Judkins was there, this was an 11-win team and a roster that won a Peach Bowl. And I believe that Lane Kiffin's going to do everything in his power to continue this 10-win mantra. They've already got 2 10-win seasons, and they're looking for a third with a victory over Duke. What if they just carry that over? And now this is sustainable, and you bring in a running back. And by the way, there's one thing that we know. The Grove Collective is going to spend money. They're going to put their money where their mouth is and maybe write anybody who they think is a difference maker a blank check. So if you bring them on in, you pair him with the quarterback in Austin Simmons, with Caden Lee at the number 2 wide receiver. You bring in another number 1 wide receiver. You just brought in Pettis, the offensive lineman from Arkansas. It could work. It could be a really good fit. But the team I would really like to see him with, and the team that I don't know if they'll be able to get him, but I will say this. If you're making a ploy for one guy to outbid other teams, it's South Carolina. Stay with me for a minute. South Carolina, I know they have the running back and Howe that comes on over from South Carolina State. I know they brought in one of the guys, the very young dude, what's his name? Jaquel Holman. He's going to have, I think, a big-time role. They just lost Braswell to the transfer portal. It all depends on what happens with Rocket Sanders. He's probably gone after this year. You're not going to have Oscar Attaway back. You have a quarterback that is a difference maker. You have a guy that can be the biggest enforcer, and for my money, a Heisman Trophy finalist, if not the Heisman Trophy favorite next year. You got an offense that is going to capitalize on trusting and emphasis when it comes to the passing attack, whether it be a tight end, whether it be on the perimeter. Mike Shula also loves to run the football. Go look at his numbers when he was the offensive coordinator working alongside Cam Newton. They were promising out in Carolina. And more importantly, and probably really big, they love to have a 2 tandem running back set. And that included with a mobile quarterback in Cam Newton. So your mobile quarterback is the Norris Sellers. You already got Howell. You need a second dude, and one that might eventually end up being better. Remember, Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, what they were able to do. If you get him, what is there to lose? You're getting a running back that you will have for 2 years to build a foundation with, and Shane Beamer can actually say, this is sustainable. This is a new version of South Carolina football, and one that is going to last. We're entering a new era of the SEC, and we're players. We're right there. You don't turn us down. In fact, you embrace the fight that comes to Columbia. You embrace the atmosphere of Willie B. And Alabama comes to town, and we were 2 points away from beating you in your backyard. You think you're going to be able to handle a nighttime environment in Willie B with the chaotic caboose coming down there? The War Chickens are fighting. And this is the fit. I'm going to be real. I don't think that South Carolina needs to get in bidding wars over certain wide receivers. They need to get in bidding wars over certain offensive linemen, certain defensive linemen. I think that they're going to land some premier guys, and they're going to land some up-and-comers that we aren't talking about the way that we did with Kyle Kennard this past year, who eventually became named Defensive Player of the Year and well earned it. If I'm in a bidding war, I'm in a bidding war for Justice Haynes. Give me a running back to pair with Lenore Sellers that can be a Rocket Sanders replacement, blast on off into the end zone, stabilize my ground game, and punch my ticket to the college football playoff. If South Carolina can land this kid, watch out for the Gamecocks in 2025. Let me know in the comment section down below, where do you think Justice Haynes lands? He's going to have options outside the SEC. He's going to have options inside the SEC. But which is the best location for him going into 2025? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials. Links are in the description. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. Justice Haynes. This is RB1. And I'll tell you what, you probably need him on your roster. Peace.